All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series, but the QA, that's the important part, the question and answer. We like to make this an interactive conversation. I'm here with the chat, already seeing some great faces in the chat to have some lovely conversations. And it's why we like to make this a bit more of a follow through. We not just like catching a couple of headlines in your social media feed. I hold my podcast on a Monday so that we've had the whole week to kind of sort out some news, or maybe some news broke over the weekend. And then we can kind of come together and try and chew through it a little bit more, spend a little bit more time on it as all of these stories break, as all of these stories develop. Seeing some great faces here. We got Simon Says Hypno. We've got Lampros Bros, Barry Johnson, Michael Corcoran, Colonel Corn Pop, Coppa Cash, J Man, Nate. What's up, Nate? Jojo the Techie, Pakistan, Lampros Bows, Ron Guido, Kib Squib. So really stoked to see some folks jumping in already. Farhan, what's up? Greetings all. It's been a while. Well, Farhan, I'm glad you could jump in and hang out for a bit. Michael Corcoran, hey gang, I missed some of you on Nomad Tech yesterday. Had to watch the replay again every day of the week. There are cool techies out there putting out some fun shows, and I'm privileged to be the Monday morning. The cranky, you just had a great weekend, and now we will descend into the depths of tech politics and tech shenanigans and tech news. But we've got some fun stuff to chat. We got a lot of AI stories this week. That's always good for the SEO, I guess, because I don't know about y'all. And you'll have to pardon, I still have a lot of biology happening. I'm feeling so much better, but I'm still coming in way slow. Just trying to get back up to speed and trying to get healthy and recover from COVID really rocked me. So you're going to hear a lot of dropouts still, but my voice is a bit stronger. Just you're going to hear stuff. So apologies. Um, Dang it. I can't get that. That's that little dry tickle cough in the back of my throat. And I can't seem to shake it. Hold on one second. Let me drink some coffee and you don't hear me slurping on the mic. Michael Corcoran, yeah, you get us when we're at our most miserable, Juan. It's a great business strategy. Well, to me, it's like one of those things. Misery loves company, right? And I'm the cranky old guy that's always yelling at these massive tech corporations, and that's one of the things. Like I was going to jump in there. I'm tired of not being wrong. I really want all this stuff to be cool. I really want these massive tech, consumer electronics, data corporations to come out with cool stuff that we can use. I'm tired of bashing my face into my keyboard to say, hey, what this big company is about to do probably isn't going to be a good thing. And then everyone kind of going, but it's the popular hype thing right now. You're just a hater. And then what we all warned people about happens, and everyone sort of like shock Pikachu face. How could we have foreseen that this terrible thing would occur when there were a bunch of nerds like me and the fellow people in this chat going, hey, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm so tired of that cycle playing out. So please pardon a little of the Schadenfreude, and I'm going to try and restrain my glee over a series of problematic AI stories, because at the beginning of all of this, folks like me have been saying AI in its current phase of language learning models are basically just ripping off content creators. Even Apple is ripping off content creators. Um, there is no like privacy or security. This is not a business model with any consumer facing application. It requires hundreds of billions of dollars in investment in things like data centers that draw significantly more power and slurp up water just to kind of keep fueling mediocre search results. And of course, they're going to pivot to government contracts, because the only way to make this sustainable is to get taxpayer dollars directly from the government. time and time again, this is like yet another rug pull. It's an investor bait scam. There are so many cool applications of machine learning and on device, like using an NPU to, like get better speech to text or transcription or the ability to translate other languages. There's so many cool machine learning applications that would be practical daily driver experiences. But just like crypto, the sexy big marketing hype push is not what's interesting, or at least not what's a practical business. When it becomes sort of a mundane daily use thing, that's when you've got a real business. When you're trying to excite people about it, it's not real. It's not a thing. And I'm tired of being not wrong about this stuff. Sometimes I'm too early to the party. Like, I was way too early on ARM PCs. It was 5 years too early for when we would get good Windows ARM tablets. I mean, and laptops. But I'm not wrong. And I hate that I can't just go in on the hype cycle with everybody else. So, I hope everybody had a lovely weekend. The Olympics kicked off in exactly what I think a lot of us were expecting. The French opening ceremonies were bizarre and fantastic, and I kind of loved. I loved the presentation of it, but it was crazy long. That was a very long opening ceremony to sit through, and I worry that now this is just kind of keeping an arms race going where every country feels like, well, I guess we need to make our opening ceremonies 4 hours long. Like, don't worry about us watching the opening ceremonies. You don't have to like try and get our money's worth for that. That's okay. You can kind of condense it a little bit to tell the story of the host country. It's fine. So, I'm sorry. I just got a couple comments from Nate and talking about Apple and AI and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm gonna kind of. Normally, I would let that sidetrack me. We've got to get through some housekeeping. I cannot let this podcast go like 3 hours long. I just definitely don't have enough voice for it. And there is some kind of cool stuff that I want to share because in the for the gadget block, not in the gadget block, for the gadget block, I've got this beauty right here, which is the OnePlus Pad 2, and I have not had it long enough to properly review it. So we can talk about my experiences in trying to finish up what would be a review of quite possibly the best Android tablet of the year, and what that might mean, since I guess whenever another company other than Apple makes a really nice tablet, we have to really question. I mean, but who even uses tablets? Aren't tablets a solution in search of a problem? I mean, iPads, yeah, buy iPads. But, if it's another tablet, don't we have to question the usability? So anyway, we'll get into that second half of the podcast. I got some stuff out this last week. I'm kind of having a bit of a proud of me moment because let me tell you, it has been a struggle to get back up to speed. Oh, Pup on Tech, thanks. You sound better. How are you feeling? Slow. That's kind of that's kind of the gig right now. Is I don't know if this is COVID fog or just exhaustion, but man, I'm like I'll be in the middle of a conversation and then just immediately blank in a way that I don't think I've ever felt before. And now, like, weeks after testing positive for the first time and rocking that scary high temperature, it's like I have no stamina. I have trouble. Like, I went outside and just like I want to take a walk around the block. It's not it's I don't even know how far around the block is. It's like about a half a mile, maybe something like that. And I'm trudging. Like, it is so slow. And then there's this like gentle grade uphill to get back to our unit in the condo complex. And it's like one foot in front of the other. And I'm slowly ambling my way back up this hill. It's so bad. So anyway, let's jump into some housekeeping. I don't want to blow my voice on again. Why my voice is so fragile? I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about tech. So let's kick over to the public stuff. The big story was, of course, getting a video out unboxing and setting up the OnePlus Pad 2. Just a quick look at what's going on, and of course, in hilarious fashion, What I was sent was not actually the full retail packaging. So I had to put in a little disclaimer that something that was missing in my box, opening up this box, is actually still going to be included for consumers. And we're going to talk about the OnePlus Pad 2 later in the podcast. And then I finally got this out. I have to be a lot more careful about the earbud reviews that I'm doing, because if I do too many earbud reviews back to back to back to back, I get gnarly ear infections. So I finally got to spend a little time with the CCA Rhapsody, which has this little 4-switch selector on the back, which is kind of like a 4-switch EQ on the earbud. So you can tune and customize the earbud in hardware before you throw it over to like your music player or your DAP or anything like that to customize further. Big, chunky, multi-driver earbuds. CCAs are always hilarious for their crazy multi-driver experiments. So this is yet another escalation of how crazy their earbuds can get. Then, as we start digging into the OnePlus Pad 2, I realized that coming back, I did a whole bunch of benchmarking on the Pixel 8a. And I never published any of those benchmarking results. I'm really good at doing the tech reviewing, y'all. So I wanted to do a post comparing the Pixel 8a and the Pixel 8 Pro on, even though Google advertises these two phones as having the same chip, it doesn't mean you get the same performance. But then along the way, I got the OnePlus Pad 2, and I've also been spending just a little time kind of revisiting Chromebooks. So I've got this Acer 515, a Chromebook Plus. And so I kind of did something silly here. If we account for the sale on the OnePlus Pad 2, the Pixel 8a, the OnePlus Pad 2, and the Chromebook are all under $500. So for doing a benchmark roundup where I'm looking at video rendering performance, I'm looking at audio podcast mixing, batch photo processing, file compression, uh, instead of putting out separate articles, I kind of wanted to see if you run Android apps on a device under $500, what kind of performance would you expect? And so this puts a Tensor G3 against a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 against a 12th Gen Intel Core i3. And I felt like the results were really interesting. So that's on Patreon, the patreon.com/somegadgetguy. And this directly relates. So if you catch any of my previous benchmarking articles, I mean, all of the scores will relate. So you can see how this lines up against the Dimensity in the Vivo and like Snapdragon 7 series, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this one, I got a request just to kind of make it a little bit more public. I used to shoot videos on benchmarking phones and no one would watch them. They would tank my watch time. So then I started writing them up publicly on somegadgetguy.com and no one would read them. Like, no one seems to care what these devices can really do, except for a small group of people that also, that Venn diagram overlap is pretty heavy with my patrons. So I've just been leaving them on the Patreon. So I got a request just to make this one a little bit more open. So what I think I'm going to do is make it free to read for anyone who's a member. So you can be a free member of my Patreon. I don't put a lot of articles out for free on my Patreon. But if you want to see this benchmark roundup and see how badly an Intel Core i3 can lose to a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 in a video rendering test, then this article is going to go free to read for members. So you can't just go to patreon.com/somegadgetguy and read it. You have to become a member. So that's going to be opened up. And if there's any noticeable uptick in readership for something like that, I might make all of my benchmark articles free to read for members on my Patreon. I don't know. It's become increasingly frustrating for me because I feel my vision of the phone was a practical daily computer for most people. And instead, it seems like the entire tech industry has really tried to pigeonhole the phone as a basic communicator with some okay-ish cameras that you'll want to spend $1,000 on because then it becomes some kind of status symbol. And that's not what I got into tech reviewing to talk about. I wanted to show consumers, like, if you spend a little bit more on a phone, you should be able to use it as a computer. And wouldn't you know it, when I pit a mid-ranger phone, a mid-priced tablet, and a Chromebook all at the same tasks, they're all just computers. Some of them perform tasks faster than others. Computers get work done. And if you can get your work done in Android apps, then yeah, it doesn't matter what shape the computer is. So anyway, lastly, just to kind of wrap up my rambling housekeeping here, this one I don't mind spoiling. I don't know who needs to know this, but the OnePlus Pad 2 has video out. Like, while I was shooting my unboxing and setup, literally the first thing I do with any premium device now is plug it into one of my Next docks just to see if there's any potential usability for an external display. And then I also show in this article what the desktop mode looks like, which I found to be very surprising. It was a really interesting twist because the Android desktop mode has been fundamentally broken since Android 12, except for the OnePlus Pad 2. Not the OnePlus 12, not the OnePlus Open, but the OnePlus Pad 2 does something a little bit different, and I was really happy to see that. Yeah, Nate, exactly. Surprise. A computer is a computer regardless of its size, or its shape, or its bezels, or what backplate it has. So, it's good stuff. See, Michael Corcoran, these are like fun conversations. It's an interesting choice between the Pixel 8a and the OnePlus 12R. I'd probably lean towards the OnePlus in that situation, as much as I prefer Pixel camera launcher, probably has double the battery life, but the Pixel gets like double the software support at this point. It would be a tough choice. And I think it's fair to bring up the difference between outright hardware performance and software longevity. And what kind of expectations do we have on Android updates over the next 5 years if you can put out a phone today and say it's going to have 5 years of software support or 7 years of software support? Do we really expect that those differences in Android are really going to be revolutionary? Or do we think that these companies are going to start really slow playing what changes from year to year so that they can maintain that update support? And also, do we expect that it's still going to be the same quality of software into year 7? That it's really optimized for a 7-year-old SoC. So it's a moving target, and it's something that we'll have to investigate over the next 7 years as these devices age. Let me get this out of the way here. Michael Corcoran, I've never actually owned a tablet with LTE support, so I guess I don't know what I'm missing. Does the Surface Go still have an LTE version? Galaxy Tab still offer it? As far as I know, I don't think. I think the Surface Pro 9 SQ3 might be the only 5G enabled Surface right now. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. That was a question. That was not a declarative statement. I think the OnePlus, again, OnePlus is looking at this in a way where they can disable certain components. They don't have to pay for the separate 5G modem. And there's a major aspect of the OnePlus Pad that they want you to connect it to a phone. Surprise, surprise, they want you to connect it to a OnePlus phone. And then you get this synergy of sharing your data connection. So that's the difference. Pup on Tech, don't Chromebooks get 10 years if they are Chromebook Plus? Though I don't think the chip in the Pixel or the Chromebook will keep up. I think the Snapdragon would. Yes, so not just Chromebook Plus. Google went back and started retroactively extending support for Chromebooks out to 10 years, which was the correct thing to do. And I think it'll be interesting to see because, dang it, I couldn't catch that cough. I think it'll be interesting to see because we know Chrome is actually going to start transitioning into more of Android, right? we've been talking about this forever. It's stupid to have two separate operating systems. You could make one more like the other and then incorporate that into future products. And it seems like Android is kind of the winner. Like it's really been difficult getting developers to make Chrome OS specific apps. So to open up app support, they included better emulation, and Android apps run on Chrome OS. Let me drink some water real quick. And that's the direction I think we're seeing Chrome head. I mean, there will be Chromebooks, but it seems like in several years, the underpinning is really going to be more of an Android-like operating system, an Android-like environment, and hopefully that is going to narrow the development for apps and services, while also maybe improving Android tablets, where if you've got that experience of making a multi-windowed operating system for Chromebooks, you can improve the tablet experience as well. I don't know. I'm kind of spitballing here, but I think that's going to end up being the plan that we see. So if we're already promising 10 years of software support for a Chromebook, I don't think it's unlikely to see a future generation of phone that similarly gets about a decade of software support. And especially if we're making the hardware more repairable, we're mandating that you can easily replace a battery, then I think that makes a lot of sense. Get this out of the way there. And why don't we go ahead and jump into some stories here, because we do have a lot of politics to chew through. And this is also kind of a follow-up from our story last week. So everything that we're going to be talking about, all of the housekeeping, all of the show notes, and all of the articles that we're going to be discussing, everything is linked in this week's blog post on somegadgetguy.com. So especially if you're catching replay, somegadgetguy.com, you can catch this week's post and click through all of these articles. These are things that I really want you to read. Again, I am not bringing news to the table to be an authoritative conclusion to that discussion. All of these are moving, evolving stories. And if we don't stay on the pulse, then people we don't agree with get to make decisions about how we use and consume tech. This is the main focus of the very first story. Because last week we had an FCC story. This week we have an FCC story. So yet again, I get to showcase the incredible work, the incredible journalistic work of one Mr. John Brodkin over at Ars Technica. The Fifth Circuit Court upends FCC Universal Service Fund, ruling it an illegal tax. Court says universal service fee is a misbegotten tax that violates the Constitution. This one's a pretty big deal because this service fund is what helps fuel the low cost broadband initiatives. So, if we get into the article here, if not overturned, the ruling would upend the $8 billion a year system that is used to expand telecom networks and make access more affordable through programs such as Lifeline discounts and development grants for internet service providers. So, I have a massive problem with the conservative side of this conversation because they want to talk up free market and they want to talk up competition, and those things are great. I would love to see more broadband competition in every market. I would like to be able to choose between Spectrum and Comcast as my cable provider in one location. But these companies realized it's better if they don't compete, and they've actually influenced state policy, state law, and state regulations, often to say we're going to prevent competition. We're going to prevent consumer choice. We're going to let one cable company go to an apartment complex. And as soon as that cable company reaches the apartment complex, no one else can have a deal with that apartment complex. They can only get their internet from one provider. Or often we'll have the illusion of competition. Well, you could use Spectrum or AT&T. Do I get Spectrum gigabit or AT&T fiber? Oh, no, 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 no. You don't get that. It's Spectrum or AT&T DSL. And they're the same price, so it's competition. They're comparable in price. So we don't know how many people don't have access to internet in the United States. There is no accurate map. And especially after the Trump administration and Ajit Pai is the head of the FCC, we just asked broadband providers to self-report. And of course, they would always report very generously. So if one person in one small town could get some kind of broadband, they would just sort of light up, say that this whole community or this whole block or this whole, little section of the map, well, that they have access to broadband. And that's completely not true. Why this matters is the major lobbying groups for all of these telecoms and ISPs keep demanding more money from taxpayers. But at the same time, they keep fighting any kind of regulatory action from the FCC. If these businesses depend on taxpayer dollars, then I believe taxpayers should have some say in how those businesses are run and how that business is conducted. If they are truly free market competitive entities, then they should not be running to the government asking for more of your tax dollars. I think that's pretty clear. I think that's pretty easy. So these companies are refusing to roll out broadband in more areas because that's expensive. So we set up this fund. You're getting taxpayer dollars to fulfill your network demands and upgrades, but some of the revenue that comes in from your business has to go into this bucket, and you have to show that you are committed to this process of either offering lower cost solutions to disadvantaged customers or that you are expanding your network to reach other areas where people didn't have broadband. So the reason why the Fifth Circuit is this decision is concerning is because the Fifth Circuit is known for being a very, very conservative court, that they are very against any kind of redistribution or wealth or pooling or any kind of business practice like that. And they tend to side with some very specious arguments. So the people, I need to read this paragraph from John's article. I'm not going to go through all of John's article, but I need folks to kind of keep up with this. The FCC The FCC previously prevailed in the 6th and 11th Circuit appeals courts, which both rejected claims that the Universal Service Fund is unconstitutional. So hold on, we're going to pause right there. If I can disable Firefox. 2 other courts have already ruled that this practice of pooling money to offer these services and reduce costs, not unconstitutional. So 2 appeals versus this one from the 5th Circuit. So the 6th and 11th Circuits have already said this practice is not unconstitutional. It does not represent a tax on these companies. Just had to point that out. All 3 cases against the FCC were filed by Consumers Research, a nonprofit that fights, quote, woke corporations. So if you're a nonprofit, you're an advocacy group, and a part of your mission is fighting those woke corporations, I don't know about you, but I would be inclined to not consider that entity an earnest participant in the political process. But hold on, there's another combatant here too. And a mobile virtual network operator, an MVNO, called Cause-Based Commerce, which offers wireless service to, quote, values-based consumers who want alternatives to the many companies and providers that support causes and positions contrary to their beliefs. So you know how Verizon is just too woke these days. So you need to do business with an MVNO that will value your values. And those are the 2 entities that are bringing up this fight against the FCC in trying to provide lower cost internet solutions to consumers and to roll out more broadband in difficult to reach areas. Which again, if you're an MVNO, that actually helps your business. If you can light up a little fiber or even just roll some copper or set up some fixed wireless internet, that helps your business. It helps you reach more customers. But again, it's not about that. It's about disrupting a liberal initiative and entrenching a business model that earns you revenue, and you don't have to comply with paying into these funds or with working with these agencies. It's hilarious. So last week we had the story about the FCC that net neutrality was getting tied up in the courts again, and we still don't have word back yet on that appeals process. This week the FCC has now been sort of paused, for lack of a better word, on maintaining this system. And again, this was also something that conservatives in Congress were trying to vote against, the funding for low-cost broadband initiatives and stuff like that too. So they're getting fights from both Congress and in the courts for something that would be a significant benefit to a number of Americans. And then also, we don't know how many Americans would benefit because they're literally not mapped properly. Like, we don't have the data yet. It's actually through rolling out this fiber and rolling out broadband services and fixed wireless internet services that we would get a better idea of who is currently underserved, because the ISPs and the telecoms seem incapable of giving us accurate maps on what their coverage really looks like. So this is another one that we need to keep an eye on. You can be frustrated with hearing politics in a tech podcast. And if that's your gig, then I have to let you know every week if there's an FCC story, I start with an FCC story. But this is also where an appeal to empathy shows that you're a nicer or kinder individual. Right now, I've found that outside of my little collection of viewers and commentators here, even when we don't disagree, even when we don't agree, we get into some really nuanced conversation as I'm looking through comments here on my podcast. So I'm not mentioning anyone here specifically, but outside of this little group, I found that when I care about trying to provide underserved people with better broadband, I can't just tell someone in my little circle of like friends and neighbors that I care about that. Because the second I say I care about someone else and they're being underserved and they've got some problems, all I hear are the problems that the person I'm talking to has. Well, yeah, they have problems, but look at inflation and I can't get this and my cell phone bill is too high, and what about me? And you're like, okay, I get that. So every single time I have one of these conversations out in public, I have to come at it sideways. I have to start with, well, wouldn't you know it, all of these telecoms are screwing you. And if you supported this initiative from the FCC, it would be better for you. And aren't you the victim? You're the victim too. And also, if you vote for this and you support this kind of initiative, it would radically help people join the 21st century economy, but you don't care about that. You don't have the empathy to imagine someone else's plight, but you demand the sympathy of also being the victim. And I'm tired. I want to just go directly to, there are people in rural New Mexico you don't know about, and they're hurting, and they need a megaphone to talk about their issues. And we should care that there are people in this country that are struggling as badly as they are. And I am not the right vessel to deliver that message because I'm not a part of their struggle. I'm not a part of their issues. I believe they should be able to speak for themselves. But I can't just go directly to that. I can't just say, people in Appalachia country, they are not a part of the 21st century economy. We have to support initiatives that would help them be able to join a modern workforce. But I can't just say that. I can't say I just care about someone who's hurting. I've got to come at it sideways, and it's so frustrating, and it's exhausting. I'm really tired. So again, if you're privileged enough to never, ever, ever, ever look at or pay attention or talk about politics, that's great. I can guarantee you that massive corporations really care about politics, and they really care about how you use your tech and how you pay for your tech, and they're making decisions on your behalf because they have a direct signal, a direct pipeline to all of the politicians. And literally one of the few things that can slow them down a little bit are the underfunded commissions like the FCC and the FTC. We can't expect the EU to do all of our regulatory heavy lifting for us. It doesn't work that way. Hold on, let me take just a drink of coffee here, and we can we can. I want to get into some of these comments. I know I got a little bombastic there. I apologize, but it's still like every week I still get, oh, why are you talking about politics in your tech podcast? And you're like, because tech is politics. Anything you do with your tech is in some way, shape, or form political. Hold on one sec. So Gabaletta, it's the same with everything else in society. People don't care about issues unless it directly affects them. Then they care. And I feel like that's true to a point. But again, when I spend less time on Threads and I spend less time on Twitter, I haven't spent any time on Facebook in years. If I find a little pocket community on Mastodon, I'm really sort of enriched by having these conversations where people who sort of understand that they're doing okay right now can talk about, can spare some time, a minute out of their day to go on Mastodon and say, I think these people are hurting and they could probably use your help. You see lots of fundraising campaigns, you see lots of programs, initiatives, charities, and that's unique, in my experience, that's unique to Mastodon. And I feel those people are probably also reaching out on Twitter and probably also reaching out on Threads. But that kind of thing's political. So Threads is going to tamp it down for you and it's not as visible in your algorithm. And Twitter is going to signal boost terrible people. And so you're not going to see the people who are reaching out and trying to share this message because also it's algorithm based. And Mastodon doesn't have an algorithm standing on your neck. It's not a boot heel grinding your jaw into the dirt. So that message gets through on Mastodon. And it really does give you a little bit of hope for the future of humanity that there are people out there that genuinely care about the plight of others. Not situations that directly impact them, but they can see if I can help that other person, it makes my community, my neighborhood, my group stronger. And it's better for everybody if the lowest in our society are properly cared for. You get a benefit out of that, it's just indirect. So I don't want to completely write off humanity. That's not the podcast I want to put out this week. It's that we can find some hope, some chatter, some positive, again, and it's not perfect altruism in any kind of philosophical stance, but it's still better than what we're fed on the algorithmically sorted social media platforms. It's like you've got to retrain someone who's just consumed garbage. You've got to work them back up to eating a salad, right? It's tough, but it's possible. So anyway, I just wanted to get through a bunch of these. Sorry, I caught a pair of posts from Dave Burns and then also from Nate. From Nate, Mastodon is so good versus the others. I like that Threads is federating so I can follow those who would never try out Mastodon on my preferred platform. Again, you can kind of silo them. I'm not sure I'm going to open up my Threads. Or again, it's going to be on the person who runs my instance, but I don't know that I'm going to directly follow Threads folks just because it's still kind of importing Threads drama into my Mastodon, and I like how clean my Mastodon is. Pup on Tech, thank you for discussing important things here. I have other spaces that restrict politics here. It's worth discussing, in my opinion, as there is a community of level-headed people. And the thing is, I want people to disagree, but I want people to disagree on policy. I need us to kind of agree that it's a problem when we don't have fair pricing on internet services. That's net neutrality. I want us to agree that it's a problem that the internet is still technically classified as an information service and not the telecommunication backbone that runs our economy. I think we should be able to agree on that. Then I want us to fight, well, if we call the internet a telecommunication service, how do we regulate that? That's important. And there should be huge disagreements there. But if you're coming at me and saying that the internet is a small part of the phone service as it was originally created in the days of AOL dial-up, I'm going to think you're a moron. I can't pull that punch anymore. I think you're dumb. Phone is the least used app on your smartphone. The internet cannot be, by the definition of a telecommunication service, the internet cannot be an information service. It should be Title II. And then we should disagree on what that means for regulating a newer telecommunications backbone than what was originally devised when our telecommunications regulations were put in place. Then we have a substantive conversation about how to control and how to manage that. But we need to agree on reality first. And that's where I've got problems. That's where I'm just not patient anymore. So David Byrne says parts of Appalachia didn't have electricity and telephones until the 90s. And we can all tisk tisk at that, right? Like, that's incorrect. That's not okay. And then I got to hit you with areas of the Southwest still don't have reliable internet, still don't have reliable electricity, and sometimes don't even have reliable access to other things like water. And that's today. And I need people to care about that. I think that speaks, again, that doesn't need to be the driving force of your day, but the awareness that those people exist and that maybe we can craft better ways to help them, just something in your brain, right? If you saw someone on the street and you're like, I know that person doesn't have electricity, doesn't have running water, and doesn't have access to telecommunication services. I feel for them. If there was a way to help them locally, like by donating to a food bank or maybe donating an old device to like a shelter that they could then give that person my ancient cell phone that still kind of works, we would do that. But then when I say whole populations of people throughout Arizona and New Mexico and Colorado and Nevada, like, just don't have that, like, the problem kind of gets a bit too big. And then we're like, oh, but I don't know that there's anything we can do, or how could we help them? And I need us to overcome that initial panic resistance to an idea that's big. Areas of Appalachia were underserved, and we fixed it, and we made it better. And we can keep doing that. And especially when our tax dollars go into funding the improvements to these networks, I demand some of my tax dollars go to making the situation better for people that we don't get to hear from. So anyway, I went longer on that than I meant to. Let me take another drink of coffee, and then we can share a pair of Twitter stories that I think are kind of hilarious. I got to do these two more and then we can move on to Elon Musk. Pup on tech. Well, luckily, our politicians are all young and hip and know plenty of things about tech and definitely don't live in the 80s. Man, we got some that I feel like are still living in the 1880s. Michael Corcoran, the irony is when you go to communities dedicated to politics, policy rarely ever comes up. It's just cultural platitudes and memes mostly. And that one I definitely agree with. If your definition of politics is just Democrats good, Republicans bad, or vice versa, then yeah, you're not really getting a conversation on politics. What I would love to host here, especially in the first 30 minutes of my podcast, is like, hit me with where I'm wrong. But again, I still need us to agree on some semblance of what is reality. And I'm not going to entertain someone's argument being net neutrality is an overreach because you're dumb. Net neutrality is like the bare minimum for ensuring some kind of level playing field, and it's woefully underfunded. It's held up in the courts, so it's not even active right now. And I'm not gonna agree with your assessment. Like, net neutrality can't be an overreach if the courts still have it on hold. So anyway, we're moving on, and this is hold on, let me get this out of the way. Uh, this we've got a pair of stories here, and again, you have to kind of. I apologize for some of my glee in not being wrong. We in this chat specifically, sorry, excuse me, in this chat, for a number of these AI companies, I think we've all been generally in the same place with how these massive data tracking companies have been sucking up all of our user data. And I think a lot of us would kind of point out, like, I don't know what a solution is to that, that doesn't overstep, that doesn't wreck major parts of the internet. Like, how do you fix for this? And I need very clever people to start talking about consumer privacy initiatives and copyright reform so that we can have a conversation. We can have some kind of structure to how do we keep an AI company from just wrecking all of your stuff, right? But along the way, I keep mentioning these things, and people keep pointing. Oh, but I mean, you're just it's like doomsaying, or you're just against progress. I had someone say you're just against progress, or you don't know anything about AI or how it works. Which I mean, I don't code for language learning models, but I'm pretty decently educated on how language learning systems kind of work. So when this story comes up, it just sort of helps us reinforce, do we ever take these companies seriously when they talk about things like consumer privacy? You're a user on our network and we're going to make sure that you keep this safe. Twitter blocks a lot of traffic and research and analysis, so you can't get information out of Twitter. Like, you can kind of get a tweet sort of viewed, but unless you're logged in and on Twitter, they block a lot of stuff so you can't see it. There's definitely this idea that Twitter is trying to preserve their data and their value and protect the content from their of their users, because they're also just ripping off all of your stuff. Elon Musk's X, excuse me, that's Twitter, quietly changes default settings to allow it to train AI model Grok with your posts. Several Twitter users noted on Friday that the platform quietly changed its data settings to automatically opt in to training its new AI model. A new category appears under the Data Sharing, Privacy, and Sharing section in the platform settings called Grok, the name of Elon Musk's generative AI model. It asks users whether they want to share posts and interactions, inputs, and results with Grok to be used for, quote, training and fine tuning. And I don't know about you, but I got no alert that there would be any kind of change to the terms of service. I didn't get any login splash page. There was no warning pop up. I don't have the Twitter app installed on any of my phones anymore. I deleted the apps from all of my devices. And now I just occasionally pop in maybe once every other week just to make sure nothing is on fire with my account over on Twitter. But I haven't received any notification that there was any change of policy. And that is something that the FTC can totally investigate. See, the FTC is kind of toothless unless a company violates their own rules. So the FTC can go in and investigate unfair business practices, but one of the things that they're actually really strongest at is saying, you made an agreement with your customer or with your user, and then you changed something and didn't alert the user. That's actually a really big no-no. That's a really big problem. And that's something that the FTC can totally go in, examine, and investigate. So I don't know if anyone here, if anyone here in the chat, please drop me a message in the chat. I maybe just, because I have so many like pop-up blockers and ad blockers and stuff like that on my browsers. Did you open up the Twitter app and see we're changing a policy? Did you open up the Twitter app and say we need you to agree to a new terms of service? Because I have not seen anything that has pointed me to this change in how they are tracking your data, which means to me that this probably isn't a significant change in how Twitter is sucking up all of your data. It means to me that Twitter has probably been training Grok on all of your stuff this whole time, And this is in a really funny way. This is a way to get around some of the EU regulations. They added an opt out button, even though they've been doing it this whole time, to comply with data policy in the EU. That's my guess. So it's not that they've opted you in now, it's that you've always been in. And they never gave you the ability to opt out. So now they're giving us this legal requirement to allow us to opt out. I think that's what's really happening. I think it's backwards. So a lot of these articles are saying, like, oh, they just totally flipped the switch on you. I think the switch has always been on, and you have just never been able to turn it off. Because I have zero confidence in Elon Musk being from Succession. He is not a serious person. He is not a genius businessman. He is a hilarious parody of an evil, mustache twirling, melodramatic Bond villain. Let's see. Michael Corcoran bringing up a great point about campaign finance reform. We definitely need to get on that. Nate is saying, I did not get notified, no emails or notifications. Jojo the Techie, never saw anything like that. Yeah, Nate was ahead of me. Nate beat me by like 3 minutes. I'm pretty sure they were collecting my data anyways. I think, again, they were always collecting your data to train Grok, and now they realize, oh no, we never we never gave them a turn it off switch. From command control device 3, or no, command control device, no prompt or pop-up or anything. That the setting can only be disabled from the web version and not from the mobile app. That is a very good point to bring up too. You cannot disable it in the Twitter app. You have to go through the web interface, which, again, I didn't even realize was a problem because I'm only checking in on Twitter through a browser. Let's see. Jojo the Techie. Like, yeah, by the way, we're taking your content. Click here if you don't want us to. That's what I mean. Again, I have to say it in that sort of casual shrug because Twitter is not a serious business. I don't know. It's something we've been doing for a while. If you'd like us to stop, I guess we could try. And how many of us have any confidence that when we click that button, our stuff really isn't getting scanned by Twitter? I clicked the button, I turned it off, I cleared, I interacted with Grok once just to see, like, if I do kind of an extended conversation or a chat, like, can I get anything interesting out of Grok? And it was terrible. So I just never used never used Grok ever again. But I even went in and just said delete my one conversation with Grok. It's so dumb. But how many of us actually believe that this is going to change their policy at all? Right? I bet you everything that happens on Twitter is still getting funneled into their AI training services, and they just have this token placebo button to try and appease people because legally they're required to. And I bet you it goes nowhere. It's like a non-functional crosswalk button, and you push it because it feels good that you can try to push the button. We take a drink of coffee, and then we've got a follow-up because with all of these shenanigans on Twitter's side, you would think that all of these terrible decisions would at least be making them money. So let's talk about that next. All right. So this is coming from Awful Announcing. I am not familiar with this website, so I'm kind of taking this one with just a little grain of salt, but it does seem to be a general news story kind of based on the most recent quarterly financials. Twitter saw a 53% quarter two revenue decline while friends have begged CEO Linda Yaccarino to quit. I want to see if I can find. I had my notes sort of on parts of this article, but I just kind of want to get to this quote here. The company's business has struggled in recent months as advertisers remain hesitant, Since Mr. Musk took the company private, it no longer publicly reports its earnings, but eMarketer, a market research agency, estimated that last year X lost about 52% of its US advertising revenue, which dropped to 1.13 billion. The firm predicted X's losses would slow to a 2.5% decrease this year. X executives told employees last month that 65% of advertisers had reactivated their campaigns, although they appeared to be spending less than they once did. Internal documents obtained by the New York Times show that in the second quarter of this year, X earned 114 million in revenue. Twitter is one of the most talked about social media platforms, but they're not that big. I think at their biggest, they were smaller than Reddit, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of users. Like Facebook has billions of users. The New York Times show that in the second quarter of this year, in one quarter, X earned $114 million in revenue. They did not profit $114 million. They just earned 114 in revenue. Now, I have no idea after all of the slashing and cost cutting and burning Twitter to the ground what Twitter's overhead costs might be. But I need to put that into perspective where, for example, like Reddit just cut that deal with Google and they get $60 million a year from Google so Google can scan all of their all of Reddit. And now Reddit is actually trying to make Reddit unsearchable by other search engines because Google is paying them and Google is giving them this huge user bump, like traffic bump in all of the search results and stuff. So it's mutually beneficial, and that's totally not a jerry-rigged or collusive business practice that would be investigated by regulators. Absolutely not. Google would never do anything like that. Reddit would never do anything like that. But that's one deal. And they made $60 million on that one deal. Twitter earned 114 million in one quarter. That is not a real heavy-hitting, top-tier, premium social media business. Twitter has fallen so far in what they used to generate, what they used to earn, like eking out small profits because, again, it was a really expensive platform to maintain and keep running. And Elon Musk has completely decimated that. I need someone smarter than me. I need someone to kind of crunch the numbers on, like, if that's what their quarterly revenue looks like, what is the valuation of this? How do you value Twitter at $50 billion when they're going to earn, what, 600 million a year in revenue? You've got a number of zeros off on revenue statements to expenses to profits to then the valuation of that company. There is no possible way that a company that earns less than $1 billion a year in revenue, or is, I guess they're saying it's going to fall to about 1 billion a year or 1.1 billion a year in revenue. There is no way that business could be worth $50 billion. And we already kind of know that the valuation or the estimates have probably been at least sliced in half. If you're earning $1 billion a year in revenue, you wouldn't really value that company at $30 billion, would you? Just selling it off for parts, you could never come close to realizing that valuation. 20 billion? Is Twitter worth 20 billion? Would someone come in today and say, hey, I want to take Twitter off your hands, Elon. I'll give you $20 billion. Cash, straight up. You can try to pay off some of your investors who I'm sure are really happy with how you've handled their investment. Would that even be a reasonable assessment of Twitter's current value? It's like on every single front, from the social to the policy to the actual platform, the stability of the platform, the protection of users, the usage of user data, how they're trying to monetize and get advertisers back on the platform. There is no metric by which Elon Musk has been in any way successful in improving any aspect of Twitter. It has failed on every single front. Every change to the platform, every change in policy, and every change in monetization has made it worse and more open to attack from regulators. Like the blue checkmark thing that we talked about a little while back. It was either last week or the week before. The blue checkmark is a scam. We said it was a scam. And now EU regulators are saying this is a scam. So they're investigating Twitter on their policy of handling verification of users and the veracity of the data on the platform. Time and time and time and time again. There is no brilliant business here. There is no 4D chess. There is no, unhinged genius at play. This is a terrible platform run by a horrific narcissist, and it's getting worse. A positive headline for Twitter right now is losses will slow. A firm is predicting Twitter's losses will slow to a 2.5% decrease this year. So don't worry, guys. You're still going to make less money. Twitter is still making less money, but it's making less money. It could have made more less money. So I guess that's good. I guess he's really turning that ship around. It's so dumb. It is so dumb. I hate it so much. I'm so sorry. I couldn't catch that one. I actually had the mouse on the button and the cough just popped up before. Let me take another drink of coffee or I kind of want to get into this. All right. DTNL. Is Musk the actual anti-capitalist destroying for-profit organizations from the inside? Comrade Musk? You see, he's playing four-dimensional chess. I'm going to destroy capitalism from the inside. Haha, stable genius. Michael Corcoran, who cares about revenue when you have to fight the woke mind virus? Oh, it's sad because it's true. DTNL, Juan is secretly planning on buying Twitter for a six-figure sum, kicking off the megapickle media empire. Unfortunately, like even if I could generate, a six-figure purchasing sum for Twitter, the brand would be so tarnished. I would not want it. I don't know how much to say about this. I had a friend who was working for a large sales distribution corporation. Man, this is gonna sound. This is. I have no way of like properly talking about this, so I'm gonna be really goofy, careful. And he was working really hard within this corporation to buy the remnants of MySpace because it actually would have been a really interesting kind of brand synergy with this big corporation. And the money was still ridiculous, but like how MySpace was once this incredibly important aspect of like evolving social media, and then it just completely vanished. And it still technically kind of exists as a brand, like as a trademark that you can pick up. And it was a really interesting idea. And I'm sad that it fell through because it would have been, I don't know, it would have been kind of like a hipstery thing to do. And they knew that it would have been small. Like the impact would have been really, really small in the grand scheme of social media, but it would have been fun. It would have been tied to this other organization. And to me, it would have been a little like Flickr. If you remember, there was this photo sharing service called Flickr. And then it got bandied about. It got sold. I think Yahoo owned it for a while. And then SmugMug was a photo licensing platform, and they came in and they bought Flickr. And Flickr hasn't evolved tremendously from when you remember it back in the Yahoo days. It's a very basic website, but it is the best photo sharing social media site. If you care about photography and not just having influencers sell you products, Flickr is a million times better than Instagram. It just, hands down, phenomenal. I burn so much time on Flickr and I barely check in with my Instagram anymore. So this would have been something like that. I think it could have been that kind of thing for MySpace. A great synergy with this big corporation, and that would have been really, really fun. At this point, I don't know anyone who would burn the Capitol on Twitter. It's proper dead. Like, what made Twitter Twitter was completely extinguished by Elon Musk, and anyone who buys Twitter now would have to expend a Herculean amount of time, money, and energy into bringing it back to a fraction of what it used to be. I think it's dead. As soon as Elon Musk gets bored with it and, decides that it's not even worth his time to like bait post on his own social media platform, then it just evaporates. There's nothing left holding it together except the ego of this one humongous man baby billionaire. Yeah, Gabaletta, exactly. At this point in time, Gabaletta saying, at this point in time in Twitter's lifespan, they would have to pay me to take control of the remnants of what it used to be. We will pay you to take Twitter off of our hands. So in another little Schadenfreude post, again, not something that we need to dig too deep into. It's like a quick, again, as you go through like the quarterlies, you kind of get a sense of like what businesses are really delivering, what companies are really making money, and then what's just kind of a hype cycle. And increasingly, I've been saying this for a while now, I feel we're starting to peak on the AI hype cycle. I think we're still trying to impress consumers, but consumers aren't spending money on AI. There are no consumer-facing business models that really make money. They just sort of stem some of the bleeding, the hemorrhaging of all of the costs associated with setting up data centers. So I just need to have my phone ready here. So this one's coming by way of Windows Central, written up by Kevin Okemwa. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced your name. Sorry, Kevin. OpenAI could be on the brink of bankruptcy in under 12 months with projections of $5 billion in losses. And I'm just going to read their key lines right here. What you need to know. OpenAI is reportedly on the verge of bankruptcy. The startup spends $7 billion on training its AI models and $1.5 billion on staffing. The ChatGPT maker's operation costs are not satisfied by the approximate $3.5 billion generated in revenue. Okay, so hold on. I just want to, let's see. So the first one is 7,000,000,000. So it's at 7 billion plus 1.5 minus 3.50000000 equal, yeah, the math checks out. They're in the hole $5 billion. That's so dumb. It's a good thing they're not a for-profit company, am I right? Because they're definitely not making any profit. So, this is not a consumer-facing business model. And we should not be shocked in the slightest that there have been a flurry of news stories, especially following comments from the Trump campaign that if Trump is reelected, we're going to get in there and we're going to make America the bestest at AI. I'm paraphrasing. Of course, a bunch of big companies want the government dollars, the taxpayer dollars, to keep their businesses afloat. When you need to maintenance and build massive data centers to train this data, you incur incredible costs. And that's also why we're looking at building data centers in countries around the world where we can skirt their environmental policy and suck up as much water as we want and do as much damage to the local environment as we can for the cheapest price that we can work out. It's getting a little more difficult to maintain and operate massive data centers in the United States because we're starting to really care about things like climate change here. And we're wealthy enough still as a country, not as individual people in the country, but as a country to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't suck up all our water. But other countries around the world would love to have that investment in place, even though long term, they'll probably get wrecked by those business deals and those water rights. That would be bad for them. But in the short term, their politicians can say, look, we brought big data company here and they're doing big business and people will have jobs, so we'll make more money. I guess you'll just be real thirsty because we can't afford water anymore. 5 billion in the hole. They don't have a deal with Apple to generate revenue. They have a deal with Apple to boost users for exposure, just for access to people on iPhones and iPads and Macs. But they don't have a deal for revenue. So let's say you put ChatGPT services on iPhones at scale. Obviously, it's only going to be iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 16 on that get these services for the, for the on device. But for the cloud stuff, you could probably bring some of those services back to several generations of iPhone. And you flip that switch, and now you got 1 billion users hammering all of those services. ChatGPT, it gets real popular, but OpenAI isn't making any money through that arrangement with Apple. They are expending a lot of money with a massive surge of users to their platform. So they're going to incur even higher costs on their cloud AI services. I don't think in the next 12 months, and especially because our next article is going to talk about iOS 18 and Apple's AI issues also, I don't think OpenAI is going to find 5 billion more in revenue just to balance the books. And I feel with Apple users, they're going to incur even higher costs. I think this is a bad look for one of the sweethearts of this current AI race. The language learning model is only one aspect of creating machine systems that can kind of improve over time. I think OpenAI's business model has monetized too early. So now every company is walling off their research, where language learning models used to be a lot more open and you could collaborate more and companies would sort of work together. Now everyone has a vested interest in making theirs as profitable as possible and keeping their data proprietary and blocked from everyone else. And that also means that we're not investigating other aspects of sort of general awareness, AI, or whatever we're calling it these days, the other systems that we can employ to make a machine smarter or to try and help a machine figure things out over time, improve the software and the system over time. OpenAI has set actual AI research back at least 5 years, and they're not making any money to show for it. Which is just, again, why are we taking this seriously? It is just investor bait. We needed to sell giant warehouses full of GPUs and chips from NVIDIA, and crypto isn't doing what we thought it would do. NFTs didn't spike. Sorry, I have to laugh really hard with NFTs. NFTs didn't spike the consumer interest like we thought they would. Well, I mean, what about AI? AI is the perfect investor bait because you have to move billions of dollars around. And some companies benefit from that, like NVIDIA. But other companies are going to start struggling, like the companies that are actually developing the models that we run. Because it's really expensive. Unless you can make your own hardware infrastructure and not pay billions of dollars to Nvidia and billions of dollars to data centers to operate this structure, this platform, I guess you just need to make your own warehouse of stuff and probably also build part of your own internet to make that somewhat less expensive. Investors get really excited about that because they see billions of dollars. Billions of dollars are moving around. But there's no business model here that's sustainable. So in the short term, it's another hype cycle. In the long term, AI, this machine learning stuff, is going to become really mundane because it should be. Really practical daily operation of machine learning things on your phones, you already have them. It's like you have a keyboard on your phone that will predict the next word for you, and it gets it wrong most of the time. So we make that a little bit better with every iteration, and it sucks a little less. I don't know about you, but my keyboard hasn't been great lately. I feel like the results and the responses that I get for things are actually not better than what I used to get years ago. You can just subtly start improving things like text to speech and speech to text and translation. If someone's speaking another language and you can have them talking to your phone, you can get some kind of communication going back and forth. Those kinds of things are pretty mundane. And when we get really excited, like, oh, look at this, I've got a photo tool and it will blur my background. That's just subject identification. And we've had that since, like, what, the Huawei Kirins? I want to say, what is that? The Huawei Mate 10? Like if I point my camera at something, it knows that it's an animal or a person or a landscape or a flower. Cool. That's just subject ID. Now we've got subject ID that's smart enough to look at the focus and look at what's in focus and what's out of focus and can select the in focus stuff. Like the Nokia 9 from a couple years back. This is not profoundly revolutionarily changing how we use our devices. It's iterative development on the machine learning stuff that we've had for a long time now. The boring stuff is what we'll really use day to day. The hype is just what gets investors throwing money around, but there is no business model here unless they can tap a government contract and get a funnel of billions of dollars of taxpayer funds going directly into their company. That's all I think OpenAI can count on. If we don't see over the next year a concerted effort from OpenAI to land government contracts, then I'm pretty sure OpenAI is going to not be as exciting an investment opportunity as it has been over the last year. DTNL, Juan AI, a one-stop shop for your tech review needs. I still want to try and take one of like my mini PCs and just dump. I have everything that I've ever written for over 10 years now and just dump it all into like a little mini PC, and it would be terrible and slow. But I want to see, like, can I train a language learning model on 10 years of writing to see if it can kind of approximate my voice whenever I talk about stuff. We got, man, this is such a news heavy week, and I've been rambling so much. We're going to kind of fire through some of these here just a bit faster. Again, in contributing to my AI Schadenfreude, I don't remember what Apple's claims were for their machine learning initiative. But according to articles like Bloomberg, they said, like Bloomberg is saying, Apple claimed in their keynotes that their machine learning AI features would be available with iOS 18. And that now we're having to see delay. So now Apple is saying that these new Apple Intelligence features, part of an integration with OpenAI's Chat GPT, won't be coming until at least iOS 18.1. So we're seeing a delay there. I don't remember if Apple specifically said in their keynote whether or not. So here from Bloomberg, Apple announced the new features and operating systems in June at its Worldwide Developers Conference, saying Apple Intelligence would debut as part of iOS 18 and iPad OS 18. The new timing means the AI capabilities won't be widely launched until a subsequent update to the new operating system. An Apple spokesperson declined to comment. So I would be willing to extend the one olive branch in saying, I wouldn't be surprised if during the keynote, Apple said a feature that you can use in iOS 18 is this new machine learning stuff. But they didn't mean specifically 18.0.0. Just if your iOS device is running iOS 18, that's a feature that's coming to iOS 18. Could be 18.1, could be 18.5. And I bet you that the literal interpretation of that comment from an outlet like Bloomberg is in conflict with the casual or colloquial estimation from Apple executives that it would just be coming in some variant of iOS 18. So I think that could be part of the communication disconnect, but it's being talked about as if it's being delayed, that it's not launching with iOS 18. So there is still some conflict in how Apple messaging is actually talking about this stuff. And of course, Apple is very reluctant to ever point out things like delays. Like when camera improvements came to the iPhone around the like iPhone 11 era, they announced all of this really exciting stuff that was coming to the iPhone, and then it didn't arrive for like 8 months. So did you really get what they promised? For 8 months, you had an incomplete product. And we never, ever criticize Apple on that kind of stuff. If Sony announces a phone and then it doesn't ship in that same month, this is a cataclysmic failure. Sony PR is terrible. They always overpromise and underdeliver. They can't get anything right. If Apple announces a new feature in its keynote as part of the presentation of their new operating system or their new smartphone, and then it doesn't ship for like 6 months, well, I mean, that's fine. Apple always gets special consideration and unlimited runway to bring some basic feature to market. The kind of stuff that we take for granted in Android land is the basic evolution of what their machine learning tools are on the iPhone. And again, it has to be basic because iPhones don't have enough RAM to do more exciting things with machine learning components. So I genuinely don't remember. I genuinely do not remember what Apple's specific exact claims were. But if you were looking forward to trying Apple Intelligence, it's not coming with the public release of iOS or iPad OS 18. You will have to wait for one of the decimal updates coming soon at some point, whenever Apple decides to fulfill their commitment to their customers in delivering new features to your phones, which you can't even really use anyway because it's not going to come to a current iPhone 15. You have to buy an iPhone 16 if you want to use something like this. I guess Apple just can't commit to really properly supporting their devices over years of software support and initiatives. But it's a terrible joke because obviously I'm picking at people's reactions to the Pixel 8. Hold on one sec. So like Nate is saying they had a lot of things saying later this year, but announcing iOS 18 and then bringing iOS 18 to market is later in the year. Do you know what I mean? So Nate saying, yeah, they had a lot of stuff in the keynote that was later this year, which could be a day, could be a week, could be a month, could be after the iOS 18 beta. When you release the iOS 18 beta and then you release the iOS 18 public release, that's later in the year. So again, I feel like Apple gets to play this game where they can announce this new feature, get people really hyped up for a new product or a new solution, and then just sit on it for 6 months, 8 months. I like for the iPhone XS, we didn't get the revised camera interface for 2 iOS updates. It took almost 2 years to go from the old iOS camera to the new iOS camera on the iPhone XS. And it was over a year that that camera was behind the iPhone 11. So if you saw the iPhone 11, you got all the new camera features, and they let that sit for a year before they brought all of that to the iPhone 10s because Apple is so good at software and support. But no, it's all just planned obsolescence. It's all about ratcheting how you are going to want to get this new product because you're being denied things before. So again, I'm not willing to go too far in extending that olive branch that just because Apple was nebulous in their claims that they should get some special consideration for how they release products to market. Yeah, Michael Peppertech is saying the 18.1 beta today has Apple Intelligence. It's on a wait list currently. I suspect they'll drop 18.1 with the iPhone 16s like they did 17.1 with the 15s. I feel like that's probably accurate. So again, I think it would behoove Apple to be a little bit more specific about, hey, this is a brand new feature and we have expectations that it'll come in this time frame. But then they don't get the same kind of excitement over announcing the new feature, right? It works against them to give you more accurate information on when we should expect this stuff to happen. But increasingly, I would just recommend to anyone who's interested in shopping Apple stuff, if you catch a keynote and they say this is a hot new thing that's coming, expect that it's going to be 8 months to a year. And then it's a pleasant surprise if it's faster, but then you don't get your hopes up that if you buy a new product that year that you're going to get all of the features that they announced at that keynote. Give them the buffer. Temper your expectations. It's Apple. I mean, we can't expect them to, be fast in delivering the things they promise to deliver, right? They always take their time. They're always late to market. I love it. All right, what do we have left? Just a quick. I wanted to point this out just because I extricated myself from Adobe. I don't use Adobe products at all anymore unless I'm working with a client that will give me an Adobe license to use if we have to collaborate on something, and that's only happened, I don't know, like twice in the last 4 years. For the most part, I'm fine using a whole variety of other pieces of software. And that was reinforced too, moving over to an ARM-powered laptop, that Adobe is horrifically behind the curve on getting their products updated. So this is from gamefromscratch.com, which I believe is a personal website, and I don't know who writes it. So apologies, I don't have a byline on this. But the Adobe DOJ lawsuit unredacted. On June 17, 2024, the U.S. Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against Adobe over their business practices, specifically their early cancellation fees and difficulty customers face when attempting to cancel their Creative Cloud accounts. And I just want to get down to two sections. And so part of this was redacted, and now a version of this lawsuit has now been unredacted, and they have a link, a PDF link to what was unredacted. Section 4. Defendants know that these inadequate APM plan disclosures harm and mislead consumers, but continue to engage in these unlawful business practices because better disclosures would hurt Adobe's bottom line by reducing subscription revenues. As one Adobe executive admitted, the hidden early termination fee is, quote, a bit like heroin for Adobe, end quote, and, quote, there is absolutely no way to kill off ETF or talk about it more obviously without taking a big business hit, end quote. So we're starting to see more legislation like I believe there was even some policy written up in India where they're making it explicitly illegal to employ dark patterns in your apps or services that prevent consumers from getting better information on how that service works. And this is a part of the DOJ investigation here. Adobe is a scummy company. The promise of Adobe's subscription was to keep you at the bleeding edge, better support, all of these things, but really, they fall so far behind in living up to those commitments to their customers, and instead they just make it really painful to get out of a contract with Adobe. I bought DaVinci Resolve at DaVinci Resolve 16. 16? I started using it at 15. I might have paid for a license at 15. Anyway. I have not spent another dime on DaVinci Resolve. I've got 2 licenses. I'm now on DaVinci 19 beta. So over 4 years of using DaVinci Resolve, I paid for the license once. Similarly, I've paid for Affinity to do some of my photo editing, and I paid for Affinity 2, version 2, and that has been, let's say, I think I bought Affinity 2 on sale, and I think it was like $30. So I've maybe spent $80 over the last 4 or 5 years on photo editing. I still do some of my composites and layers in a program like GIMP, and that is not as good as Photoshop, but I kind of don't need Photoshop. Time and time and time and time again, I've found other solutions that still get me to my completed product that still, and in many ways work better than what I was doing with Adobe products. They've run more stable, they've been better supported. I've gotten faster updates, I've gotten crazy new features out of DaVinci Resolve that have been slow to adopt in Adobe Premiere. Everything has been better for me, and I've spent significantly less money than if I had had any kind of Creative Cloud subscription over the last 4 or 5 years. The first year that you cut yourself out of Adobe is expensive. And then every year after that is basically free. And so what sucks is, like, I know there are people who are going to say, like, oh, but I have to have Adobe for my business or these clients. And you're like, that sucks. And I feel for you. But this is what we mean by having an open market with competition and your ability to go to other products or services and work at other solutions and strategies. Adobe is operating as a monopolistic, not a monopoly, but a monopolistic business. They are entrenching anti-consumer business practices that hurt you and hurt your clients and that prevent competition from working into this system. It shouldn't be one subscription platform taking the vast majority of creative work. We should all know that's bad. So anyway, the DOJ is seriously investigating their business practices right now because Adobe is kind of a scummy company. And it sucks if you have to do business with them, but if you have any opportunity to start weeding them out of your creative flow, take the time, learn the other pieces of software, get familiar with other solutions, and that actually makes you more competitive. That actually makes you more open to tackling other projects and working with other teams and being able to contribute to other discussions. It's a net positive, even though it is a little bit of sweat equity. You have to learn some new stuff. You have to break some of your habits. That stuff sucks. I totally get it. But I cannot tell you how happy I am to not be using anything Adobe right now. To the point where I'm not even pretending. Like, oh, I'll just keep this cracked version of Creative Cloud in case I need it for something. I don't even bother. There is nothing in Creative Cloud that benefits my business. And I am so happy. It took a little while. I had to change some of my behavior. I had to change some of my habits, but I am so happy that I'm there. It is so much nicer and so much cheaper being able to work this way. Dr. Claw, heck yes it is. Adobe is the definition of impoopification in the business space. And also Dr. Claw, yeah, GIMP is not fun, but I use it. GIMP is not fun, but like I'm putting together a cheesy thumbnail for one of my videos. I just need layers, and I stack a couple things in there, and I do a couple little cutouts, and I do a glow effect, and I put some text on it, and I pop it off. And GIMP is free. So it's ugly. I hate their menu structure. I don't like how some of their tools work, and the performance can be kind of a drag. But it's free, and I still get to a completed product about as fast as I would using Photoshop. It's not so substantially different. Now that I'm a little bit more familiar with GIMP, it's not so substantially different that I can't replicate the same flow. That's really nice. And you know what's cool is GIMP actually included native ARM support back during the 8CX Gen 3 days. So I could either use GIMP in an emulated Windows flavor or in a Linux flavor on my Robo Ancala. And when I first got my Robo Ancala, the Linux version of GIMP was so much faster. I mean, it was significantly noticeably faster. But then this random little update popped up, and on their blog, they mentioned, oh, hey, yeah, we flipped a switch. Apparently, we're ARM native code now. And in the Windows version, that performance improved significantly. So now when I fire up GIMP on my new Surface laptop, it runs native in ARM. You know who's struggling to make their apps ARM native code? Adobe, the company that is getting billions and billions and billions of dollars a year in subscriptions, is struggling to bring their apps up to date for ARM powered Windows devices. So that's dumb. You can't claim to be a market leader, but then say, oh, but we just couldn't. We know that this will eventually be a significant part of the Windows ecosystem, but we can't be ahead of the curve on that. What do you think? We're some kind of market leader leading the way? No, 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 no. We're a massive bloated organization that basically maintains a lot of their profitability by screwing our customers. We're not innovators anymore. Jojo the Techie, I'm still using Pixelmator Pro on my Mac for video editing. I'm not giving Adobe any of my money. And then she says, sorry, I meant for photo editing. I think it's totally worth playing with a couple other pieces of software. I do not get any money from this. I don't have an affiliate code to give you. There's no link in my show notes for this, but if you were to try Affinity, Affinity just opened up because they do sort of an Illustrator style program. They do sort of a Lightroom style photo editing program, and then they've got something else. I only use Affinity Photos. But there's a trio of really great apps that can kind of help you. They're not going to completely replace Adobe programs, let's be fair, in how Adobe can staple services together. But they can do so much of this for cheaper, it's totally worth checking them out. Right now, the Affinity apps have 6-month trials. Affinity will let you use their apps for free for 6 months. And guess who was ahead of the curve on ARM native support for Windows users? Oh, not Adobe, actually. That's funny, because you would think that the massive company that makes billions of dollars on raking their customers would be able to get ahead of ARM PCs. No, it was Affinity. Affinity had ARM native support for all of their apps for a while now. They were ready to go before the launch of X Elite and all of these new ARM laptops and PCs. So Jojo the Techie, I'm not picking on you, but again, Pixelmator Pro is great, and if it's getting all your work done, that's awesome. But Affinity is really nice. I really wish more people would check them out. Oh, Nate's correcting me here. It's Designer, Photo, and Publisher. Thank you. I couldn't remember. There's a trio of Affinity apps, and apparently they're 50% off. Check them out, and even if you don't want to spend all the money on them, you can use them for half a year for free. And it's really hard to beat an extended test drive free if you want to see if you want to use them. I don't know. I just think it's silly for the people that don't need to hold on to Adobe, just going, oh, but I'm sort of familiar with that workflow. I like getting squeezed for more money just because it's a part of a habit. I guess, because Adobe isn't going to be nice until a larger entity squashes them for doing terrible things to their customers. Yeah, Pup on Tech is saying Affinity is so much better than GIMP, and they now have a 6-month free trial. Now, I am guilty of being just sort of familiar with the workflow. I actually do kind of like, if I've got a really big composite project, like I've got to put a lot of different layers together, the organization of layers and plugins in GIMP appeals to me when things get more complicated. But obviously, if I'm editing a photo, maybe doing just a little kind of quick cut, or I want to drop some text on it or something like that, Affinity is so much nicer. But I paid for Affinity, and I would have an expectation that the thing I paid for would be nicer. Pakistan is saying I prefer Krita. Krita is good. I like Krita too. Again, I'm more familiar with GIMP. Um, a DTNL. GIMP is scarily good. It ain't intuitive, but man, if I only had the use case for something that complex. It is not intuitive. It is not pretty. It is not well organized. It's terrible conveyance. And when you first fire it up, their menus are horrible, but it's free. And it's free and it's built by engineers. Oh yeah, that's right, Jojo the Techie. GIMP even works great in a Linux container on Chrome OS. So even if you got a Chromebook, you probably don't have a top spec, super powerful machine. Linux apps run so fast. It is night and day. It is. I mean, I have a little Core i3 in that Acer, and it runs so much better than if I were running Windows and trying to load GIMP on a Core i3 in Windows land. It's like like you get a whole tier of performance upgrade when you switch to Linux on the same hardware. So if you have a Core i3 in Windows land, you kind of have Core i5 performance in Linux land. So nice. So nice. From Pontus. I have the right throat for this right now. Who knew that open source software were faster at adopting new technologies? Let me tell you, ARM support has been so like that totally made it sort of filled in all the gaps that I had with like older versions of Windows on ARM. Because I could fire up a Linux app and it was so much faster. It was so great. Let me get this out of the way. Oh, yay! Jojo the Techie saying she's going to give Affinity a try. I did not buy Designer and Publisher, and I don't use apps like that a lot. But if they're 50% off right now, I think I might just. Oh, they can't. Did they cancel it? I don't know. I'm gonna look it up. If they're still on sale, I'll grab Designer and Publisher, even though I don't use those things a lot. Lastly, believe it or not, this is still like a news thing, but we don't have news on this news. We just know that news is coming, so I don't have to spend a lot of time on this. This is an exclusive preface to news from Reuters, written up by Fu Yun Chi. Meta to be hit with first EU antitrust fine for linking Marketplace and Facebook. This is one we need to keep an eye on, but it's not going to happen for a couple months. So, because of Meta's business practices in stapling together services in ways that the EU has found anti-competitive, this is from the article. Meta could face a fine of as much as $13.4 billion, or 10% of its 2023 global revenue, although EU sanctions are usually much lower than that cap. So the official verdict for what this fine coming down is going to be will be announced in late September or early October. The fine is coming. There is a fine that Meta will face for what the EU considers unfair or anti-consumer business practices. That's a done deal. There's no debate on that. Meta has run afoul of these regulations. Now what we need to see, how big is that fine gonna be? I do not believe we're gonna see that full 10%. But even at like 5%, if you have like a $7 billion fine over one aspect of Facebook's business practices, that helps send a message. It's about sending a message that these kinds of things you make a lot of money on, but maybe you shouldn't be. Or if you want to make a lot of money on this stuff, here's the tax that you're going to have to pay on that business practice. So if you're making more than $7 billion on how you're stapling these services together and you're kind of ripping off other people on your platform, great. Go ahead. Keep doing it. Because then if you keep violating this, maybe we will ramp up to that full 10% of your yearly revenue. I want so bad. I want to see what this is so bad. Want so bad. We need these market corrections for how massive data brokering, social media, algorithmically driven platforms have been doing business. They've been operating. as an individual user on Threads, I can't change Meta's business practices. I can't recommend a better course of action that would maybe also make them a little bit less revenue every year, but would be better for the community and be better for the health of their users, better for privacy and security, yada yada yada. I can't move the needle at all. Even if all of us got out there and got all of our friends and family really amped up about how we were handling things like Facebook, we wouldn't be able to nudge Meta. But you know, a $10 billion fine, that might get the job done. I want that so bad. I'm really anxious to see. So that was just news to announce that further news will be coming, but we need to keep an eye as we get into September and October. There is also going to be a change in commission leadership at the EU. So we're expecting that that fine is going to come before the commission changes over leadership, but we'll need to see. Because then, if someone comes in and they're leading this regulatory charge, they might be more business friendly. They might whittle back more of that to say like, oh, well, let's make it $100 million. Facebook will totally learn their lesson and then nothing will change. We want to see, can a fine actually change how a corporation does business with their users, how they handle user data? If not, then we've got to figure some other operation, some other regulatory action that can change how corporations do business. Like maybe we need to start looking at more criminal application of these policies and services. And that's scary stuff. I don't think we really want to go there, but unfortunately, if that's the only way to affect change, that might be a conversation we need to have. Oh yeah, Jojo the Techie. Oh nice, Affinity doesn't even ask for payment details while you do the trial. Yeah, it's real good. You just use it for free. You just sign up. You have an account and then you use it. And at the end of your trial, if you want to keep using it, then you can give them a credit card. But it's not a subscription. It's so good. Drives me nuts. They're like, oh, I can't step outside my comfort zone because I used Lightroom in 10 years. Give it a try. I really like Affinity. It's solid. I went way crazy long here, folks. Who wants to talk about the OnePlus Pad 2? I was really trying to hold like more like a half hour at the end of this to talk about this tablet. I think the OnePlus Pad 2, here, let me actually like turn it on. Oh, I should turn the volume down too. I don't need all the beeps and bloops and clicks. So I am not going to be, I think today or tomorrow is like the full review. I mean, your YouTube is probably already getting hit with videos about this tablet. I put out just sort of an unboxing, a first impressions, a setup video. I feel the Samsung Galaxy Tab will be the best, Tab S, the most expensive ones, will be the most, how do I want to say this? Galaxy Tab is going to be the best Android tablet of the year, but at a significantly higher price. I think Samsung's software, their approach to DeX, other services, accessories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You just shopping one, you will have more options to get a case for a Galaxy Tab than you will any other tablet on the market. Just things like that. I don't think it's a shock or surprise or anything like that. I don't think it's controversial for me to say Galaxy Tab S is going to be the best Android tablet of the year. It is such a tough recommendation when right now the OnePlus Pad 2 is on an early launch sale for $499. This is proving to be my favorite Android tablet of the year. It's going to get more expensive when you add a keyboard and a stylus, obviously. But this thing is such a screamer. Excuse me. I have a full list of tests and benchmarks, and to spoil some of that article, that will go public. It will go free to read, but it's not going public. You have to be a member of my Patreon. I'm going to start opening up the benchmark articles for members, even if you're not a paying member on patreon.com/somegadgetguy. I put this thing up against a Core i3 Chromebook running Android apps. Now, obviously, that is not a completely oranges to oranges kind of comparison, right? This is a slim, sleek Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, one of the most expensive SoCs that we make in Android land right now, but there's no active cooling. A Core i3 is not a screamer CPU. It's not one of the more powerful processors that Intel makes, but that's a full clamshell laptop setup with fans. So I'm putting a full laptop with active cooling against a slim, sleek tablet that just has to radiate heat when you give it a beefier task. And they're both, again, with this being on sale, they're both under $500 generally. I mean, you can still find Chromebooks running like Celerons for like $450, right? That is garbage performance even for a Chromebook, lowest tier of Celeron and Pentium. This thing is so performant. It keeps rising to the occasion as one of the best examples of what you can get out of a Snapdragon chipset. And when it loses fights to some of my other comparisons, it loses fights to things like the Dimensity in the Vivo X100. It is like because of a radically different CPU architecture, and it doesn't lose by much. This is going toe to toe against like the Galaxy Note 24. So if you have a $1,200 phone, you're sort of matching the performance with this $500 tablet, which again, if you needed the productivity, if you needed some basic laptop replacement, you know, those types of things that you would look at, why do I want Android on a larger screen? It would make sense in my head to maybe spend a little less on your phone, maybe get a OnePlus 12R and then hook it up to a OnePlus Pad. And I know you're replicating a lot of compute power, but you could piggyback your data connection on the OnePlus 12R and feed that into your OnePlus Pad 2. And the OnePlus Pad 2 could be your, I'm sitting down, I need compute power, I need to get work done device. It is such a wealth of compute power. Like these chips are going toe to toe with the U series processors from Intel. And they're doing it at at least half the power draw. So I have a laptop with a Core i7. It's a 12th gen Core i7U. When that thing idles, it idles at around 12 watts. Peak power draw for an ARM chip is about 15 watts. My Intel laptop doing nothing except keeping the screen on is using as much electricity as this tablet rendering 4K video. And this can render 4K video faster than that Intel will when it's up to 30 watts. I think the TDP on that U is a 28 watt. But again, as the total system power draw is probably around 30, this thing runs circles around that U series processor. So what if we're really talking about mobility, taking products out into the field? I've got to travel, I've got to work out of hotel rooms, I'm trying to accomplish all these different tasks, but I need to be able to do this stuff away from a charger. ARM. ARM is the right solution. You have to change your behavior a little bit because you've got to find apps that run in Android. But if I could run DaVinci Resolve optimized for Android, it would perform better than my 12th gen Core i7 laptop. This running ARM native code is more powerful than my Core i7 laptop. At least if we're to believe benchmarking apps. And don't even get me started on GPU performance. This thing embarrasses 11th and 12th gen Intel integrated graphics. It's a little closer fight with 13th gen. There's just a little bit of a GPU nudge to like, how that crunches data. But again, if you have a year-old laptop with just an iGPU, this tablet is outperforming it to the tune of around 30%. Again, just in its ability to crunch numbers, that's significant. So this thing is a sleek, sexy, pretty, well accessorized, great multimedia performance. And OnePlus has brought back, or I guess I shouldn't say brought back, has brought the ability to run an external display off of the USB-C. So it is now becoming a slightly better option for productivity. Like if you really need to work off of your tablet, you might want to bring like a NextDock style solution. You got a keyboard and a trackpad and an extra display, and they can all work together. So you have a dual screen kind of setup. That's something you might want to consider. It is a thing that you can now do on a $500 Android tablet that closes in on the functionality of something like an iPad with Stage Manager or a Galaxy with Dex. Stage Manager and Dex, better than what you get here, but not by as much as you would think. They are better, but this is functional. And you can do things with this that we haven't been able to do previously with other OnePlus pads. You can't do with the Pixel tablet, the stuff that really drives me crazy. I have this bucket of compute power, and it's harder to put that compute power to the services, the apps, the platforms, and the productivity that I would want to use it for. But even if you had nothing else, let's say you don't use the desktop mode, it is really cool being able to plug VLC into an external display. I just found this out. VLC is now more aware of apps that it's more aware of hardware and when you throw to an external display. So it blanks out your built-in screen, but it will send video to a connected monitor. So I was watching, I had my OnePlus open on our flight to London, and I was watching. I was rewatching Flight of the Conchords, just because it was something I knew I could watch. I'd just get a chuckle out of, and I could kind of fall asleep. It wasn't precious if I was really watching it the whole flight. And the screen is still technically on, but it's totally blacked out. And then I was just wearing my X-Real glasses, watching Flight of the Conchords on that with nothing on the phone screen. Same thing with LumaFusion. You can throw your video preview to an external display. You don't have to use a desktop mode. LumaFusion knows there's another monitor. You can use that for your preview, get full screen preview, and then you edit from the built-in screen on the device. That kind of stuff is already starting to become more accessible. That stuff is starting to pop up again, little bits here, little bits there. Sometimes it's a game, like I have a map for a racing game, or sometimes it's video editing or photo editing. Those previews are becoming more and more consistent. I'm really hoping that we see in Android 15 a cleaned up desktop mode. But right now, the OnePlus Pad 2 is the only Android 14 device that I've used that can fire up the built-in Android desktop mode, and it is functional. It's not pretty. It doesn't have all the nice stuff that Dex or Ready 4 has, but you can put multiple windows on your screen. There's a functional app drawer, and you can use it connected to another monitor separate from what's built in on the tablet display. That's kind of a big deal. There are no other devices that I've used that when you turn on the desktop mode, you get something you can use without jumping through a lot of hoops or throwing some ADB commands or firing off some flags. If we get Android 15 and that has an improved desktop mode on top of that, even if it's really tablety, that makes the OnePlus Pad 2 an even better productivity device. But right now, it is a functional productivity slash mid-range laptop replacement tablet. I think that is a stonking good buy at around $500. right? I don't know about how many brand new $500 laptops I would want to use instead of this for getting my work done on the go. And again, I don't even have a full review for you because I'm not going to produce a full review on this until I also get to play with their accessories. If we start bumping up this price to like $800 because it has a stylus and a keyboard, that does change some of the recommendation of what I think this thing can do well. Excuse me. But at present, it is there is nothing that beats this price to performance. Nothing. I mean, like, you got to shop savvy on some iPads to be in a good fight with the OnePlus Pad 2. You've got to find a good sale or maybe a used price on a last gen Galaxy Tab S. But going head to head, brand new, to sacrifice a little of the longer term software support, you've got hardware here that just can't be touched at $500. So, yeah, and Michael Peppertech is saying, yeah, just have your OnePlus 12 in your pocket and get all your texts and calls and notifications and cellular data without hotspot required. And I do have my SIM card back in my OnePlus 12 connected to my OnePlus Pad 2. It works pretty good. I still get a little twitchy about, again, it's an ecosystem argument where you've got these devices that they really want you to have the phone and the watch and the tablet, put them all together. But when you do, excuse me, that is a nice little perk. It does handle that well, and it doesn't feel so exclusive that you wouldn't want to pick this tablet up and use a Pixel and this, and maybe you just got a hotspot or something like that. Again, the tablet on its own, I feel, makes an incredible argument for its existence. And at a price to performance that really can't be beat. I'm very much enjoying this. I'm going to have an article coming out. I don't think I'm going to really belabor this point too much, but it seems to me that like there are only a couple ideas that techies really embrace for tablets. I've been the guy who says, hey, use your phone as your main computer. You can totally do it. Your phone is stupid powerful. It's the first computer you reach for anyway. Just plug it into a bigger monitor and you have another kind of computer powered from your phone. But I get really frustrated when you hear things like, oh, I mean, it's a tablet. And you're like, but what do you even do with tablets? Tablets are solutions in search of problems. But then they don't talk about the actual problems that tablets can solve. So I want to take a look because it seems like we only allow for a couple ideas in tablet land. So like you have garbage, disposable, cheap tablets that for some reason we think kids and old people should own. And I have to implore people, don't give your grandparents a stuttery, laggy, terrible experience. They're not going to understand the time it takes for the UI to respond to a tap or command. That's only going to make their usage more difficult. You should want to spend a little bit more on your grandparents. And thankfully, we've got some mid-ranger priced gear that isn't horrifically expensive that would be gorgeous for them to use. Oh, but they're just going to cover the basics. You should just give them the cheap garbage. Don't do that. Don't do that to someone who doesn't know how tech works. That is setting them up to fail. So we sort of understand like you give a tablet to kids so that they can watch YouTube and play Roblox on it. And yeah, I guess it's one thing that tablets can do. And then we try to do something like put it in a keyboard case. So then you've got sort of a laptop replacement, but it's only for really, really basic things. We don't get into conversations about stuff like audio and video editing. Do you want to record a podcast? You can do that from a tablet. We don't get into, cutting TikTok videos in apps on a larger surface. You just do that from your phone. It's like we don't let the tablet, we say it can kind of look a little like a laptop when you put it in this case, but then we don't really tell the viewer what you can do with that. Look, I fired up Microsoft Word and it's not as good as the full version of Microsoft Word on your desktop. And what percentage of your audience really cares about that? Because I don't think it's, I mean, it's definitely a non zero percentage of your audience. I just don't think it's such a huge part of your audience because I do a lot of writing in the mobile version of Microsoft Word. And it seems to at least get me started. And then if I need to do a few things like in the desktop version, I have the core piece written and I can do a couple little edits on another system some other time. I'm digressing a lot. Because the only other major experiment that I think we've seen is the Pixel tablet. So the Pixel tablet wasn't trying to be a laptop replacement, and it wasn't really pitched as like the little kid consumption video machine. Google tried to turn their tablet into a competitor for smart displays. So like you have your home speaker that you talk to, and you have your home display that you can take video calls on. So why not just turn that smart display into a tablet that can detach, and you can have both. You can have the tablet and the smart display in one product. I feel there are so many other things that we might want to do with a small bucket of compute power in a larger screened device. And I think we've kind of stopped experimenting, and I think we've stopped exploring what other things you might want to do. Like, this is kind of big, but it would be kind of cool to have like maybe a larger, beefier grip that you could bolt to this tablet to have a game controller. Maybe this can be the operation for some other type of recording equipment. You know, iPads do a lot of that stuff. You dock your iPad into a specific kind of deck and you can kind of control your recording interface, and that's really, really cool. I feel like there are other things that we could use compute power with a big screen to facilitate. So I'd love to hear some feedback on that. Like, what other things would you want compute power for? And does the size of the screen empower some other kind of use that we're not exploring at all? Right now, we've got little kid consumption, we've got laptop replacement, and we've got smart display. But there's got to be other things. So I'm gonna take another drink of water here, and then I think it's time to start wrapping all this up here. So just one second. And I just want to hit these comments here real quick from Michael Peppertech. I've handed the pad to my son and had my phone to use still without the hotspot data speed and video resolution limits. So handy to now have another line for your kid's tablet. I think you mean so handy not to have another line. Yeah, that's where so the correction is not to have. So you can get a OnePlus 12 plus the pad plus the Watch 2 for about a little less than the price of a Galaxy S24 or iPhone 15 Pro Max. I don't know how to like conceptualize that for people. You can have a monster crazy powerful phone and a monster crazy powerful tablet, and the longest lived one of the longest lived smartwatches in Android land right now for less than the price of a top of the line Samsung phone. And I think that's pretty good. Like, that should be a really good alternative to talk to people about and say, this is like what competition can be, and they're great devices and they're super, super powerful. And I don't know. I think we've kind of lost the hearts and minds of like encouraging consumers to try some of these things. It's like, well, I go to my carrier and my carrier says Samsung, so I buy a Samsung. And like, man, you guys are just getting raked because you just don't even know other competition is out there or what other things that you can do. And I don't know any way of changing that because OnePlus is not going to start pouring billions of dollars into marketing for North America. Google is seeing this surge of users and like all of their market percentages are improving and increasing, and they've been spending billions on marketing. There's got to be something else that you can appeal to people and point these things out. Because, like, I think OnePlus has always been an incredible performance per dollar competitor, a performance to price. Like, you've always been able to get technology that is is rivaling like an iPhone Pro, but at a significantly lower price. So it's not exactly the same. It's not going to beat the iPhone, but like, man, there's some stuff in here that's really, really good. A few things that are kind of compromises, but like, you would say that they're comparable experiences, and one costs a lot less than the other. I think OnePlus has never gotten the credit they deserve from the OnePlus 8 to today. That those phones have always been hitting really, really hard on this comparative experience at a lower price. But this last year of OnePlus has been banger after banger after banger. One of the best watches in Wear OS, one of the best tablets in the OnePlus Pad 2, one of the best two of the best phones in North America with the 12R and the 12. The just great earbuds. Like, the OnePlus buds are solid. I don't know that I would rank them in costs, but like, you can get almost 95% of the features of the AirPods Pro 2, but like for $100 less. Point and point and point and point. Just like, you gotta, it kills me. Because, like, I feel there are so many people out there that could save hundreds of dollars over an iPhone or a Samsung and not only be kind of contented, but like really like the experience because they bring unique things to the table. They're a little bit different. So I don't know. It's funny. Oh yeah, Michael Peppertech. External camera support for live streaming would be nice. I can connect a cam link to my iPad and do that. Would love that on an Android tablet. Yeah, we are sort of segmented from a lot of that. There is a Cam Link. Is it Cam? No, it's not Cam Link. I can't remember what it's called. There is an app that you can install that mimics some of the functionality of the Sony camera interface, the input, but I don't believe it shows in like your browser. So it doesn't show up as, at least at present. I haven't used it in a while. Maybe this has changed. But you can plug in a camera, you can see that interface kind of like you were using a portable display, one of those little camera recording monitors, and you can see that interface work. You have to have an input, so like you have to have a like an HDMI to USB-C that can go into the phone, but I don't believe it shows up as a solution for live streaming. Again, it's like we get so close and then there's no developer push because no one's asking for that. They don't even know you can do that. And if they knew that you could do that, well, wouldn't you rather have this like $500 OnePlus beast of a tablet to do this as like a portable recording interface? Wouldn't that be better? Oh, but I already have a solution worked out for iPad, so I guess I need to spend $1,000 on iPads instead of $500 on OnePlus pads. And that I, I have a hard time with that. I am absolutely the guy who's like, if you can give me the thing that works as well and it's cheaper, or maybe if it's even better and cheaper, I'm gonna do that instead. Oh, and JoJo, exactly. I watched 2 Pixel ads at the movie theater this weekend before the movie started. Google is definitely spending tons of money in marketing. Yeah, and that's where they're making all of their progress is they're telling customers that their products exist. Motorola isn't really doing that. OnePlus is definitely not doing that. So the company that's starting to make bigger inroads into consumer adoption is Google. I hate that it's like you have to burn that cash. I hate that the product can't just speak for itself, but you got to market. If you don't tell consumers that you exist, consumers are never going to know you exist. So, Lampros Bros, the external monitor app for Xperia, it only displays and partially controls most Sony cameras. So again, it doesn't, the Sony app is not really a control for the camera. It's more, especially in the newer versions of it, it's more like this. This is my Atomos. This is my Ninja. And I use this a lot when I have to do longer recording stretches because I won't record, my cameras have 10-minute recording limits when I record 4K 60, or I can record directly for this until I run out of SSD space. But this only has HDMI input and output. This does not control anything on my camera. So I'm not using this to control stuff on my camera. I still do everything on my camera and then record to this right here because I can put in a big old beefy SSD. So there is an app in Android, and I can't remember what it's called now, that gives you some of this monitor functionality. So you can see the clean feed coming from a camera and go, okay, well, this is, you can get like zebra striping and focusing and stuff like that, but you control stuff from the camera, not from the monitor, not from the display. And I can't remember what that's called. And that's the big perk for the Sony, the Xperia external monitor app too, is I used that quite a bit with my Panasonic. So obviously there was never going to be any communication between the Xperia and a Panasonic camera, but I could still use the Xperia as a monitor with a much better screen than what's on my Panasonic. So that's the kind of functionality I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let me take one more sip of water. We made it over 2 hours, and I'm only now just starting to fail voice-wise. That's actually pretty good. Ron Guido, you should just ask LG about marketing. They knew how to tell a story. Oh, every day I miss LG. Every day. So, we should go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you. I know this was a really politics-heavy podcast, but these are the kinds of tech stories that I feel if we're the nerds who aren't talking about this stuff to other nerds and to some of our family and friends, then these are the kinds of decisions that make life terrible for all of us when we don't weigh in on how this stuff works. If there's an FCC story, and I'm sure there will probably be another one next week, or maybe even an FTC story, I'm going to start the show off with that. And I appreciate that some folks out there don't want to even know that there is a thing in the country that is a government. And that's fine. But that's how I have to live my life. That's how I sleep at night, is at least trying to discuss policy for these things that we say we care about. How we use our gadgets, how we use our internets. We say we care about this stuff. We need to pay some attention to the decisions that are being made at the highest levels of government and from the influence of massive corporations. And then on top of that, you're going to hear me keep talking about how I think AI is a rug pull. I think it's a scam. So I would love to hear more on some of these stories where you think I might be missing stuff, or if there's a policy or an advocacy group, or if there's some type of conversation where you feel like maybe I'm a little too deep in the weeds or I'm going a little too hardcore wonk in one direction, that there's maybe a counterpoint that would make some sense. That kind of stuff really does help me understand my own arguments better. And that's where the reality of a lot of these conversations will go, is the disagreement in how you craft policy has to start from one point where we agree on reality. And that is a conversation I'm always excited to have. So I love getting into those kinds of tussles where we both care, but maybe we just disagree on some of the finer points on how we would get to a conclusion. That's the good stuff. And then on top of that, I just have a bunch of stuff coming out for wacky, fun, gadgety things. The Asus controller, I've got that video shot. I need to edit that. The Maxwell, Odyssey's new, they're not even that new. Odyssey's gaming headset is gorgeous. I've got that shot. I've got to edit that. This Amazfit, the Balance. This is the closest watch I've ever used to getting me away from Wear OS. This thing is really good in a very unexpected way. So I've got a video coming out on that. And of course, the OnePlus Pad 2. As soon as I can accessorize it, set it up, and really put it through its paces, we'll have a final review on that. But you can already see my first impressions, the setup, and on the Patreon, you've got all of those performance scores from my benchmarks and tests. We've got so much stuff. And it's gadgety and geeky and nerdy and fun. And I'm so happy to have everyone here along for the ride. So, folks, I want you to have an amazing week. I want you to do awesome with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your technology. And I'll catch you back here for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be safe. Take care of yourself so you can keep taking care of others, and I'll catch you back. I love you all.